Live from Quito, Ecuador, I'm Soini Gray and this is From the South, the evening news brief from Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. President Nicolas Maduro has said the opposition governors elected last Sunday must agree to take their oath before Venezuela's Constituent Assembly. If they don't, he said, they will not be able to take office.
Yesterday, the 18 governors were sworn in front of the National Constituent Assembly, a requisite established by the National Constituent Assembly to be able to move to the next step, which is to swear in their new positions in front of the Legislative Council. Those who don't get sworn in and subordinate to the National Constituent Assembly won't be able to take their position, whoever they are. It's a decision of this plenipotentiary constituent. This should be respected no matter what.
Y se subordine a la Asamblea Nacional Constituyente, no podrá tomar su cargo.
Maduro has been attending the local swearing-in of some of the 18 socialist governors elected on Sunday. In Miranda, Hector Rodriguez was greeted by crowds of supporters as he replaced the outgoing governor and former opposition presidential candidate Enrique Capriles. He said the opposition had had their chance.
The Venezuelan people are more mature now, and they see what is happening. They gave the counter-revolutionary forces a chance to govern in Miranda for 8 years, and they gave them the chance to win the National Assembly. But what did they do? They revealed what they really are: racist, anti-patriotic, and violent, and the people saw that.
Now, several opposition leaders and candidates have recognized the results of the regional elections and even asked the MUD coalition to reconsider its decision not to go before the Constituent Assembly. Henry Falcon, who lost in Lara State, tweeted, "Today, history and the people oblige us to tell the truth. We lost, we have to accept that with gallantry." But the 5 opposition governors who were elected at the weekend still had to contend with a deeply divided opposition response. We have more in this report.
The voting records show that in 2 years, the Venezuelan opposition lost over 3 million votes.
In this moment, we don't recognize any of the results.
Given this defeat, the opposition bloc used its old card of denouncing fraud, with no proof. It's only recognized the validity of the results in the 5 states where it won, and where its elected governors rushed to receive their credentials from the National Electoral Council. But the already fragile opposition coalition couldn't cope with the defeat. The "let's come together to denounce fraud" script started to fall apart. There was no fraud, said opposition leader Enrique Ochoa on Twitter, and the Acción Democrática party, which won 4 of the 5 opposition governorships, said the same. "These are the numbers so far, and it would be irresponsible to call it fraud," said the party. Candidates and prominent figures from the opposition distanced themselves from the idea of fraud and started to blame the opposition leadership for the electoral defeat.
The leadership has to accept that it didn't work well, and in any serious, civilized country, when a leadership doesn't reach its goal, it steps aside. There will be other Venezuelans who will know how to lead the people to the victory they deserve. This is the only country where an opposition got it wrong when it sought insurrection, got it wrong when it went to elections, and instead of saying it was their mistake, they said the strategy was wrong. We're good, but the strategy was wrong, for the love of God.
The one who's still not accepting the results is the far-right party, Voluntad Popular, which after not winning 1 governorship, now says there were irregularities in the electoral process.
The audit we're asking for is not to compare the content of the boxes with the records. That would be stupid. We won't go there. A complete audit should be done of all the process.
But their followers rebel. After the promise of more protests with no results and over 100 deaths, The opposition coalition didn't want their candidates to run under a system they called a trick and go to vote under what they called a dictatorship. The anger at their double standards and then the last-minute campaigns were the reason for such a high rate of abstention and the endless insult on social media. "Oh, now the protest is voting. It is a pity that I got the message late," one tweet said. And in another one, "The opposition didn't vote. It won't vote for you, genocidal negotiators."
Señores, las protestas en Venezuela.
People, the protests in Venezuela must grow now to make the leaders of the MUD coalition leave, to allow a new structure to lead the country to a way out. What should be done now must be in the direction of removing the MUD leadership, the leadership of the coalition.
La dirigencia de la mesa.
Que cualquier fuerza política que acepta ir a una elección garantía.
The anti-government front also fractured internationally. Acción Democrática rejected the declarations of OAS General Secretary Luis Almagro, who criticized the Venezuelan opposition for participating in Sunday's elections.
Mónica Vistali, Telesur, Caracas, Venezuela.
Our correspondent Reagan Devines joins us live from Caracas. So Reagan, do you think the opposition will go before the Constituent Assembly?
Hi Sony, after addressing a crowd of supporters of Hector Rodriguez in the state of Miranda, who is the new governor there, he had a live conference where he discussed the fact that any governor who refuses to be sworn in front of the National Constituent Assembly, meaning the opposition, will not be governors. Exactly how that affects those states, we're uncertain at this point in time. But he has been saying that since the start, since before the actual election on Sunday. He said that you needed to be sworn in front of the National Constituent Assembly to be recognized as governor of the state that you've won. Those 5 opposition members out of the 23 states who did not attend the swearing-in ceremony yesterday at the National Assembly building are still contemplating whether or not they will show up for a swearing ceremony. Today they would have met to discuss that process. We've gotten snippets of information out of the opposition today, who are still fighting amongst themselves as to exactly what the way forward is. We have persons like Jesus Torrealba, the former executive secretary of Democratic Unity of the opposition MUD coalition, who says that the entire MUD coalition is to blame for having lost the election because they're suffering of a loss of collective leadership. And so they have some opposition leaders who had been for taking part in the governorship, and those who are against. Those who are against are being blamed for not having taken part because they have millions of supporters, and they could have used those millions of supporters to have given them a better edge and possibly win more states in the regional elections. So there's a lot of headbutting going on right now. President Maduro, during a live televised speech, said is really tackling other issues at this point in time. He's denouncing the words of President Donald Trump, who said that the people of Venezuela are suffering from the hands of a dictatorship. And so allies of Trump, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, are all chiming in and supporting this rhetoric. And so President Maduro is stating, listen, you guys, we don't appreciate what you're saying about Venezuela. Venezuela is a free and sovereign country, and we are moving forward. Right now, for example, in the state of Aragua, they're putting things in place to make the state more agriculture friendly, more tourism friendly, so that they can start earning international dollars to start diversifying the economy and fixing the economy. And so that is where the focus is right now, using the state's governors, the new governors who are PSUV members, to more effectively put things in place to get the agenda of the government done. And that is really the focus of the government right now, to better the economy with or with the assistance of the opposition. They've said before that they want the assistance of the opposition, they want their participation, but with the opposition so in disarray at this moment, we're not too certain that they will get that help, Sony.
Thanks for that update, Reagan. That was Reagan Devines in Caracas. Spain will start the process of suspending Catalonia's autonomy on Saturday in an attempt to stop the region's call for independence. Today, the government in Madrid announced that the ministers would meet to activate Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution, which would effectively enable them to take over the running of the region. Article 155 allows Madrid to impose direct rule in a crisis, but it has never been invoked. Huge protests are expected in Catalonia if the article is triggered. And U.S. President Donald Trump has hosted Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rosselló during his visit to the United States. The island's governor is in the U.S. hoping to force the federal government to provide disaster relief to Puerto Rico weeks after Hurricane Maria hit. Last week, the United States House of Representatives passed a $36.5 billion aid package for Puerto Rico and other territories hit by natural disasters. The Senate is expected to consider the measure. Roughly 80% of the island is still without electricity, while 30% of the population still do not have access to clean water. This week in the Dominican Republic, the medical services in all of the hospitals went on a general strike for about 72 hours. It is the third time that doctors went on strike to demand compliance to their pay adjustment. The conflict continues while both parties involved, the medical personnel and the National Health Service, are refuting each other. On Tuesday, the Vice President, Margarita Cedeno, urged the doctors to provide medical services to the people, especially to the children. More news in a minute. Stay with us. One month on, residents of Mexico City have been paying tribute to the victims of the 7.1 magnitude earthquake that struck the country on September 19th, leaving 369 people dead. Today marks 1 month since the devastating earthquake in the Mexican capital, and hundreds of survivors took to the streets to honor the dead and the rescue teams that helped them recover from the catastrophe. Citizens from the neighborhoods of Roma, Condensa, and Xochimilco are still struggling to save some remaining items, including books from crumbled libraries or medical supplies, as well as personal items from homes and schools. People flooded the Plaza de Mayo Square in Buenos Aires on Tuesday, calling for justice after the discovery of a body believed to be that of Santiago Maldonado, the activist who went missing during a police operation on August 1st. Demonstrators, including left-wing activists, marched holding portraits of Maldonado, playing drums and carrying banners. The body, however, is yet to be formally identified. Major parties running in Sunday's midterm congressional election in Argentina suspended their campaigns on Wednesday after a body was found in the Chubut River in southern Argentina. The body is believed to be that of activist Santiago Maldonado, who disappeared in early August after he was arrested during a demonstration in support of Argentina's indigenous Mapuche community. The campaigns were suspended out of respect for Maldonado's family and due to the sensitivity of the case. Over 33 million voters will go to the polls to elect a third of the Senate and a half of the House of Representatives. The reality of people currently living in the municipality of Tumaco in southern Colombia is critical. That's how several civil society organizations describe the situation in a report about the progress of the Colombian peace process.
Impunity persists in Tumaco. There are 11 criminal organizations fighting over territory and for the illegal economic control that operates in the municipality. These groups are threatening civilians, and instead of putting a stop to them, the Colombian government responds with repression and without any guarantees for farmers.
Farmers are caught up in the middle, being pressured to keep cultivating by criminal groups. The government, which is offering them a form of repression, and a social state which is moving slowly. In other words, farmers are between three swords, and this means that every time this happens, like yesterday, it will be more likely that civilians will suffer.
Organisations reacted to the massacre that happened days ago in the Tandil zone, in which at least 7 farmers were killed and more than 20 were injured, while they were peacefully protesting against the forced removal of illicit crops. Investigators pointed out that the evidence shows at least 20 police officers fired shots against the farmers.
The testimonies we gathered reveal at least 20 members of the police used their guns, which means it wasn't by accident. Someone must have given the order, and we are investigating who did it.
Organisations pointed out that the government is losing the opportunity to build peace in that territory because while at the same time the communities insist on speeding up the voluntary substitution of the illicit crops, the government insists in a forced eradication.
Undoubtedly, there's pressure coming from the United States to increase efforts to fight against the illicit crops, something that is, of course, impossible to do in this moment because there's a program of voluntary social substitution that was agreed on in Havana and that is working. If we start with the forced eradication, we're going to create a real conflict.
The situation that people living in Tumaco is critical. This Tuesday, a social leader from the community council of Alto Mira and Frontera was murdered at a place close to where the massacre occurred. Investigators warned the same situation can happen again in 10 other municipalities of Nariño.
What we propose is to replicate the agreements made in Havana across the regions, that these agreements be taken to territory, that local authorities abide by them, that communities abide by them, that former FARC members abide by them, that the agreements include FARC dissidents and drug dealers, and that they could result in a peaceful transition.
This Wednesday, community members of Aldemir Galan stated that 6 former FARC fighters were killed in cold blood by criminal groups in the Chaco zone, in the department of Nariño. The absence of warranties in this territory is evident.
Police in Haiti have been clashing with around 1,000 protesters who are demanding that the government resign and revoke the bill approving next year's budget. Labor unions and Haitian political parties have been protesting against the budget for months, arguing that it will affect the most underprivileged of the country. This week, demonstrators tried to march from an upper-class district in Pétionville to the center of the capital of Port-au-Prince, but officers stopped them halfway with tear gas and water cannons. 20 years after the death of Honduran activist Carlos Escaleras, the Honduran government has asked for forgiveness. Leaders and activists took the opportunity to demand justice for the over 100 environmental activists murdered in the last 10 years.
At a public event in the Honduran state of Colón, authorities representing the government officially recognized the murder of the former environmental activist Carlos Escaleras as committed by the state. The declaration was part of an agreement with the International Human Rights Commission, the victim's family, and the state.
The state accepts the international responsibility for the violation of the guarantee to the right of life and the integrity of our fellow citizen, Carlos Escaleras.
The family of the victim accepted the position of the state, but they also demand justice for other activists murdered in Honduras.
To forget would mean that we would abandon the cause. If we forget, we will forget Carlos, and we will deny justice for Janet Caguas, Carlos Luna, and Berta Cáceres.
Furthermore, human rights organizations link the current situation of the Campesino groups to the sellout policies of the Campesino territories by the government.
Today, the state asked for forgiveness for the assassination of Carlos Escaleras 20 years ago. But today, the same problems that he fought for still exist. The land grabbing is still happening today at the Bajo Caguán.
The campesinos who Carlos Escaleras defended pointed their fingers at the state for continuing to deny campesinos the right of owning their own land and for the lack of environmental protection.
The land struggle will not stop because the farmers who live in the Caguán Valley don't have the opportunity to have their own piece of land to work.
The Honduran authorities compromised in order to give reparations to the family of Carlos Escaleras and more protection due to the threats that they have suffered.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Israeli authorities have released the political prisoner, former lawyer Shireen Issawi, who spent over 3 years behind bars. His release was part of a prisoner swap deal. Telesur correspondent Noor Hadassine files this report.
Israeli authorities on Tuesday released Palestinian lawyer Shireen Issawi from the Damon prison after spending 43 months behind bars. Issawi, 35, was arrested in 2014 as part of an Israeli campaign targeting Palestinian lawyers in Jerusalem. The Palestinian lawyer was sustained to 4 years in prison on March 3, 2017, while her brother Midhat was sustained to 8 years at the same hearing. On accusations of providing funds to Palestinian prisoners, the siblings of the prominent Palestinian hunger strike Samer Issawi were arrested multiple times, with Midhat spending more than 20 years in Israeli imprisonment.
Clearly, she was targeted in the Israeli jails. The Israeli occupation treated her with extreme cruelty during her detention, in a clear violation of the rights of Palestinian prisoners. Shireen was held in prison under harsh conditions. She was held in solitary confinement. She went on a hunger strike for a long period. She was deprived of family visits. She was held with criminal prisoners of Israel. She was provoked by the prison guards daily. However, like all the Palestinian female prisoners, she was strong and determined.
Both Shireen and Samer Issawi were freed as part of the Wafa al-Ahrar prisoner swap deal, which saw the release of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit from Hamas's captivity in 2011 in return for 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. However, Shireen and Samer were re-arrested in 2014 in a campaign against dozens of freed prisoners following the killing of 3 Israeli settlers near Hebron in June 2014. Nuharazin Trisul TV, Palestine.
Now here's a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
A suicide bomb blast in the southern city of Kandahar has left dozens dead. The attack, which was launched on an Afghan military training camp, is believed to have killed around 58 soldiers, although exact numbers are still being verified. The Afghan National Army have set up various checkpoints around the city in response to the attack. The attack comes after dozens were killed earlier this week in the eastern city of Gardez when Taliban fighters targeted a police training centre. Residents of the war-torn city of Marari began clearing debris after its recent liberation by government forces. President Rodrigo Duterte declared the city liberated on Tuesday after his forces defeated the Islamic State group who had taken up positions in the city back in May of this year. The victory brings an end to one of the longest-running urban battles in the country's history. More than 1,000 people have been killed in the battle, most of which were Islamic State fighters. However, an estimated 180,000 civilians were evacuated, and a further 84,760 have been displaced by the conflict. A fire has ripped through an iconic luxury hotel in Yangon. So far, one person has been confirmed dead and others have been left injured. Dramatic scenes were filmed overnight as hundreds of firefighters battled the blaze and helped 140 guests who were later evacuated to safety. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Mogadishu to rally against the Al-Shabaab group, who were behind the recent bomb blast that killed over 300 people. The president of Somalia, Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, addressed the demonstration and called for people to take up arms against the group.
Al-Shabaab, they killed 10 people at first, then 100, and now they killed more than 300. They attacked hotels, restaurants, universities, and other public places. As a president, I will be the first person to pick up a gun and go to the front line to fight Al-Shabaab. Whoever is ready, come with me.
Today marks 34 years since the assassination of Maurice Bishop. He led the Grenadian Revolution in 1979, but was murdered after a split within his own New Jewel movement. The U.S. President Ronald Reagan immediately invaded Grenada and destroyed the revolution. Let's take a closer look at the revolution in this video on our Facebook page.
Because the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada speaks English and therefore can communicate directly to the people of the United States.
And Telesur has been extending its contacts in the Caribbean to promote its English broadcast. Telesur's president, Patricia Viejas, is in Dominica and met with the Prime Minister, Roosevelt Skerrit. The central point of the meeting was to work on the distribution of Telesur English in Dominica. Prime Minister Skerrit thanks Telesur for our coverage during the hurricane season. Here's what he said.
English was very helpful to Dominica after the hurricane. You know, we were very helpful in keeping the world informed of what took place and what was taking place in Dominica after Hurricane Maria. So I think it would be very good for not only us in Dominica but the entire Caribbean to have access to Telesur in English. Information is important, accurate information is important, reliable information is also important, and I think Telesur is bringing that to the table. So we look forward to working with Telesur very closely, and I'm certain that my citizens will have the opportunity to watch Telesur live from their homes in Dominica.
We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow.